The Montgomery County Black Collective and the State of Black Montgomery present the Black Agenda 2021. Event 3. We are here. Media services provided by Montgomery Community Media.
Good evening and welcome. I am Lorianne Sales, council member for the City of Gaithersburg, a partner in the Montgomery County Black Collective, and a member of the Association of Black Democrats, creators of the annual State of Black Montgomery program series. We are pleased that you are joining us this evening for this critical event. In the interest of time, we are going to jump right in. For those of you who did not attend our past events, you may wonder what the Black Collective is. Last fall, a small group of Black CEOs, nonprofit executives, directors, and community leaders met frequently to discuss inequities in grant funding and contract awards made to Black-led nonprofits and businesses working to affect changes within the county's Black community. Despite the dedicated efforts of Black-led nonprofits and businesses addressing disparities in our community, from health and education to business and economic development, many are not receiving the funding and contract awards that other communities receive. Yet, they continue to make an impact while struggling to survive. Many do not have the infrastructure, the grant writers, or the time to network or receive invitations to tables where funding opportunities and policy decisions happen. We agreed that this must change and that it is time to foster unity and address the challenges that have been prevalent for years. And so the Montgomery County Black Collective was born. We believe we are stronger together if we join all sectors, business, nonprofit, the faith community, civic organizations, and beyond. And if we unite from all corners of the diaspora, African American, African, and Caribbean communities. Based on what we have witnessed and experienced over the last year, we see that there is an urgency to collaborate, connect, and command transformation. Despite efforts to silence our stories, bury our brilliance, and subvert our strength, we are here. And we are taking unprecedented steps to work collectively across all sectors and throughout the diaspora to disrupt and demand the change that is needed. The goals of the collective and what we hope to achieve are to define the spectrum of the county's Black community and present a comprehensive assessment of the current state of our residents, to address the prevailing disparities by using data and documentation to influence the county government's commitment to equity, to set an agenda that ensures an equitable distribution of resources and full inclusion in the policies that will improve and sustain all Black lives, to develop an actionable accountability plan with priorities, milestones, and metrics, to monitor the transformation of our health, education, and economic conditions. The first action we have taken is to launch the Black Agenda 2021, a 4-part virtual event series designed to mobilize and discuss the necessary and urgent transformation of the Black community. During the last event, members of the community gathered to discuss the many challenges Black residents experience related to inequities in health, education, and economic inclusivity in Montgomery County. The issues identified were synthesized into priorities and asks. Please note that we recognize there are many priorities that can be raised. However, we need to start somewhere. Today's event is an opportunity to present these asks to county leadership, officials, and decision makers who have the ability to affect change in policies, funding, and resources. We are requesting their firm commitment and collaboration to affect very specific changes that we seek that will transform many Black lives in the county. We will reconvene on July 14th to review what confirmations and commitments were made and finalize an actionable Black Agenda 2021 that will be shared countywide and used as our roadmap to advocate and hold those in leadership accountable to their commitments. We will meet frequently to assess the progress that is made or not and act accordingly to either laud the success or sound the alarm that nothing is being done. I just want to acknowledge all of our council members that are present. Thank you, Council Member Hans Reamer. Thank you, Dr. Daka. Thank you, Board of Ed member Brenda Wolf. Thank you, Board of Education President Brenda Wolf. Thank you, Board of Education member Shebra Evans. And I don't know if we have any other of our council members here, but I'm sure more will join us soon. Before we go any further, I'd like to welcome the elected officials and decision makers this evening who will be responding to the collective's questions and concerns. All of the county council members were invited, and we want to express our appreciation to those who recognize the importance of this event by their attendance. County Executive Elrich has commitments with the Maryland Association of Counties, but will try very hard to join us and share brief remarks at some point during the program this evening. And a few other council members may join us a little later in the program, also due to previously scheduled commitments. So since the county executive has not joined us, I am going to turn the program over to Dr. Drina Valentine. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorianne. I am Dr. Drina Valentine. I'm the founder and CEO of Integrative Management Solutions and a proud member of the Montgomery County Black Collective. We know that the economic inequities that the Black residents, that Black businesses, Black-led nonprofit organizations, they are not unknown, as well as they're not new issues. They're not new issues. And so therefore, we want to use this forum to do something that frankly should not happen, which is to bring these issues to light again and hopefully enact more positive change. And as Lorianne mentioned, I will be presenting the issues that Montgomery County Black Collective were able to compile, and ask if you can respond to it with a simple yes and a no. And I realize it's going to be difficult because what I'm going to do is ask you to hold off, hang tight on adding additional comments or supporting, let's say, a decline to support the collective and members of the Black community. And there may be valid reasons, but we want to make sure that we get through the issues that we would like to push forth, and then at the end, allow you to elaborate. And if that's okay with you, I'm going to get started with our first concern. And so our first concern is this. Black businesses need to have more access to information in the county. And we need to, we're really asking Montgomery County to reimagine a way that is culturally appropriate in ensuring that information is getting out to the Black community. So for example, we're suggesting that networks already exist, such as houses of worship, small business centers and co-working centers, fraternities and sororities, alumni associations, Black professional associations, chambers with Black, Indigenous, people of color, affinity groups, and other organizations. So our ask is this. Will you support the economic development capacity of a Black chamber or other business councils to disseminate this information and to collect data for the Black businesses. Councilmember Reamer, a yes or a no?
Yes, yes, and I would love to expand on that at the appropriate time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your willingness to hold off. I know I would want to continue, right? Okay, so the next issue is this. There does not appear to be a mechanism to determine what Black businesses are based out of Montgomery County, how many Black businesses are located in Montgomery County. And the same is true for Black-led nonprofit organizations. And what is definitely not a surprise to us, these Black-led nonprofit organizations are getting a fraction of the funds available to nonprofit organizations in the county. Therefore, we are asking and suggesting that the county needs to be able to capture, maintain, and update information on these Black businesses as well as nonprofit organizations. And the information needs to be specifically Black businesses and Black-led nonprofits, because right now we know that minority business are being information is being collected, but we feel that minority is really outdated and it flattens the importance of capturing this information. So our ask is, will you champion the compilation of gathering data on Black businesses and actually tracking MFD funding in the county? Councilmember Reamer, I'm going to ask if you could respond to that.
Yes, please, and I will expand at the appropriate time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Reamer. And at this time, I would like to also recognize Councilmember, I just saw him pop in and out, forgive me. Councilmember Hucker, sir.
Good evening. Hi, everybody.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Let me just give you a quick run of the rules, if you will, because I know you just joined us. I'm currently going over asks that the collective is presenting in our forum tonight. And I'm going to give you and Councilmember Reamer the opportunity to affirm with a yes only or decline with a no only, and then hold off any comments to support your answer until we complete that. If you're okay with that, I'm going to go ahead because the sooner I can get through our ask, the sooner that I can assure that you guys have an opportunity to continue to speak.
And I heard the first question.
Okay, sir. Okay, if you want to give your answer, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
Much more to say, but yes.
All right, sounds good. Now, another concern that is definitely not new, definitely is known, that has been voiced over and over and over, in fact, too many times in the community, is access to capital. So we're basically asking if the county can create a one-stop website that will help Black businesses determine how they can get access to capital. We know that it's possible. We know that our sister counties have similar mechanism to be able to get that information across to Black businesses. So my ask to you, starting with Councilmember Reamer, will you support the Black Business Council and other Black organizations to ensure that this happens?
Yes, absolutely. And we'll expand on that soon.
Thank you. Councilmember Hucker, I'm sorry, I apologize. Councilmember Hucker?
No worries, absolutely.
Thank you to both of you. All right, moving on. So we talked about the fact that we need to track what Black businesses are in the county. We need to track the information that is disseminated in the counties. And we just talked about whether or not there is the possibility of creating a website. Finally, the county needs a clear guideline, we feel, to make sure that there are written guidelines regarding how to apply for funding and to define these programs and to provide guidelines to the access to these programs and indicate crucial timelines. So we're asking if there's a possibility with, if I'm hearing an affirmation for building a website, so this information could actually be added to that website. So again, Councilmember Reamer, Councilmember Hucker, will you support the Montgomery County Black Collective in assuring that this information is established and available to Black businesses?
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to check my time.
You can add me to the yes on that also.
All right, County Executive Eric, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate your affirmation to supporting the ask that were just put on the table. Let me be clear on where we are in the program. I have about 15 minutes left for this segment, the economic development segment. And I want to give each and every one of you the opportunity to pause and support your affirmation to all the things that were suggested. And let me just suggest this. We're sure that you are sincere in supporting the Montgomery County Black Collective, as well as other Black-led organizations that are seeking change in the areas that I suggest. What I'm also interested in is what would be the barriers to keep you from being able to continue your support? I'm going to start, if you don't mind, with County Executive Eric Elrich, I apologize, Eric, and give you the opportunity to speak to that. County Executive, you're on now.
Since I came in to try to change the way that the county has done business. And so we've opened up our procurement processes. We have the most transparent procurement processes that the county's ever had. You can track things online in ways you can never do it before. We have opened up to small businesses opportunities to bid, and we now give a preference for local businesses. So a lot of small business owners in Montgomery County are losing out to other jurisdictions, businesses located in other jurisdictions who are doing business here. And so what we decided we were going to do in the beginning, and it took a year to get it through, but our proposal was that we were going to give preference points for local small businesses, and that included giving preference on prices. And we recognized that giving money to a local small business meant that money would recirculate through the community, whereas giving money to a business in Prince George's County or Virginia or Pennsylvania, the money leaves the county. And when we do analysis of economic development projects, people always talk about the multiplier effect. Yet when we were doing our contracting, we'd never looked at the multiplier effect, the idea that money spent in the county circulates, supports other jobs. And we realized that Montgomery County business most likely to pay property taxes and income taxes here, most likely to have employees who spent their money here and pay taxes here. And we decided we wanted to honor that and put that into our contracting process. And so we did that. And that's probably one of the most important innovations that we've done. We are now looking at introducing legislation that'll actually put teeth into the requirement that people who win contracts bring on the right number of minority contractors. And we have a process that has no teeth. So if people haven't brought them on, then there's no consequences for it. They don't lose the contract. People don't claw it back. They're not disqualified from bidding on future contracts. And so what we're going to do is introduce legislation that provides teeth. We know this is going to meet some level of opposition. We think that the minority businesses, Black businesses are going to like this But we know that some businesses, the ones who are the major contractors, are going to complain about the extra paperwork and can't we just leave this on the honor system? And the fact is that the reality of the situation is that the honor system doesn't work. So we think we can do a better job by putting in legislation that'll require people to do this. So, between giving out, we're spending over 20% of our, fungible money on local businesses, Black businesses. We're trying to make sure that we meet our obligations, and we're going to continue to do that. So this to me is like an easy ask. You've got the support of our director of procurement, and you've got the support of all levels of the county government. We want to make sure that we do business in this county and we support local businesses in Montgomery County. So we will not have a problem working with you on the agenda you've got.
County Executive Elridge, thank you for responding to our ask and supporting your affirmation with an outline of what you're doing in the county now and what more can be done for Black businesses. County Council Member Hucker, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Valentine, and thanks to you and all the organizers for putting this together. So there's a lot to say, and I don't know how long I have to say it.
You have about 5 minutes, but I'll give you a warning when your time is.
Yeah, no, thank you. Before I was on the council, I served in the General Assembly and worked closely with Delegate Herman Taylor then and the Minority Business Economic Council that he now runs, and the NAACP and many minority contractor associations to pass a number of state bills, including one that allows the state to contract with minority-owned business for subs. For general contractors and not just subs. I've been working in this space for a while, and it's frustrating the pace of change because the reforms are pretty clear, but it's always like pulling teeth to get them passed. I'm working right now with a number of Black-owned businesses in Montgomery County on a number of proposed reforms, and I have a couple of bills in drafting that I'd like to follow up with you to get your feedback on. You're absolutely right about the nomenclature, and too often our Black-owned businesses, especially subcontractors, end up getting played because they're listed as a subcontractor on a general contractor's application, and then after they win the bid, they end up getting dropped. One thing I feel like we need to do is lock in the assurance that if a general contractor wins a bid, they are telling the county which Black-owned subcontractors they're going to contract with, and they can't just play them and drop them in favor of somebody else to get through the process. That's number one. The Economic Development Corporation has a lot of flaws, more than we can talk about in 5 minutes. Among them, they were all on display in a briefing we had earlier this week in front of Councilmember Reamer's committee, the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee, where they ran through what they're doing for quote unquote minority businesses, and it was weak. It was just blatantly weak. In my first year on the council, when the Economic Development Corporation was set up, I worked with former Delegate Herman Taylor, then Councilmember George Leventhal, and myself wrote legislation that amended their proposed bylaws to lock in to their bylaws that they have to work with businesses of color to access capital and credit, period. I should have put information as well, because the holy triad to Trinity to me is access to information, access to capital, access to credit. I've rarely met a business owner that has a whole lot of extra time on their hands. Nobody has the time to search through 30 different pages of a county website to find out what programs are available and what the qualifications are. And often they're outdated and broken links and other stuff. That needs to be upfront, and we need to do the outreach to them rather than expecting them to come to us. That's our job. So the EDC, I think, has really been failing in its mission that I wrote into their bylaws to help Black-owned businesses access credit and capital, period. They need to do a much better job. They need to do a lot of staffing changes. We need much more vigorous oversight of them for the $5 million plus we give them every year. But at the same time, their mission is critical. They're not going to, I don't think they're going to do it without much more vigorous oversight from really all of us. And I definitely want you all at the table to help advise us, because that hearing just a few days ago was very, very frustrating. And they received a lot of feedback from myself, from Councilmember Juando, from former Councilmember Cherie Branson, who used to have my seat. And there's so much more to do. They mentioned that, oh yeah, Councilmember Hucker brings us businesses all the time to help. And they're right, I do. What they didn't tell you is they never help them. Whether I'm trying to get them access to a loan, a line of credit, to a grant, to commercial office space, to a commercial kitchen. I bring them one business after another, including many in DC and Prince George's that want to move to Montgomery County or relocate or expand here. And I feel like I'm about 0 for 15 in the ones I brought them, because they don't end up helping them, and they don't end up helping our homegrown businesses expand and hire more staff. We really have to focus on our homegrown local businesses, because they're the vast majority of the job creation in Montgomery County, and not just bringing in big businesses from the outside, because they've been very lackluster at that as well.
Councilmember Hucker, we appreciate your strong support for the Black community and the agenda that we are setting forth. And we look forward to an extended conversation with you. I now want to give Councilmember Reamer the opportunity to respond, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. It's really great to be here with you. And I am really, I'm pleased by the questions that you've asked. I think they're very timely. They're very precise as to what you're seeking. And I feel very confident that we can get this done. I want to step back for a moment and just say, I think the county needs to be a lot more business friendly in general, and Black-owned businesses will thrive in a county that is thriving from an economic development perspective. And you can see businesses struggling in East County, for example, as a result of decades of anti-development, anti-growth posture, and the consequences that it has brought to the quality of life and the business environment there. It's a county-wide phenomenon. I think it's particularly acute, in communities like Burnsville or White Oak, but it's a county-wide problem. We have to really get much more aggressive about economic competition, and then all businesses will have a better chance of success. But we also have to have programs that can level the playing field. And this week, as Councilmember Hucker mentioned, I convened a session of the Fed Committee, the Economic Development Committee, because I'm concerned that we don't have a satisfactory or effective strategy to support Black-owned businesses. And I worked closely with Cherie Branson to think through that meeting, and I invited her to participate in the discussion to provide a voice from the community to hold accountable not only the Economic Development Corporation, but us, council members as well. We need to have your voice at the table. And we started by working through the proposals that the MCEDC had been working on to support the development of a Black chamber. The fact that we don't have strong enough Black chambers and networking organizations is a real problem. I think you've articulated it so clearly, but unfortunately in so many things in life, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And if we don't have organizational capacity with relationships in the community, knowledge of the local landscape of organizations, and ability to be culturally competent, then you end up with the results that we have. So let's start by building the organizational capacity for Black-owned businesses to get access to the information in the county, to network amongst themselves and with other chambers. And then I think that kind of infrastructure, will really yield results over time. So we are going to get that in place, but we're going to take a little time this summer to work on that broader strategy of what is the county's strategy now for Black-owned business. And I think it hits on a lot of the issues that you've raised: access to capital. There are specific organizations that work to support entrepreneurship among Black entrepreneurs, we could provide more support for them. Clear written guidelines about how to apply for funding. I think the bottom line is, as Cherise said that day, was, if we just keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting the same results. And we really need to think differently and put something different in place, because the structures that we have, the organizations that we have, aren't producing the results that we want, and they're going to keep producing the results, the same results. So I am really interested, and I think, again, I'm excited because this is right on time. The ideas you put forward are foundational to building a better and new strategy. I've asked the executive branch, Jerome Fletcher was in the call. I've asked him to come back in 2 weeks with a written review of what the Black owned business strategy is from the executive branch perspective. And we're going to bring that back to the table.
Wrap it up in about 30 seconds.
What's that?
I was saying I need you to wrap it up in about 30 seconds.
Okay, and then I would welcome your participation in that as well. So we're on it at the committee. We've got a lot of work to do, and I think this is a piece that's been not in place, but I think we can make some progress this summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Reamer, for your strong support for the initiative that the Montgomery County Black Collective had put forth. And for you, sir, and for Councilmember Hucker, please, we are excited at the fact that you know that we exist, that we know that you know who we are. We are looking forward to the invitation to be sitting at that table.
Good.
One of the things that I think is important is Sherry Branson's voice is very important. What is equally important to both of you is that you have Black business owners that are very active in Montgomery County, very committed to staying in the county, and would like to also have a voice as to the direction in which Montgomery County is going to push forward the agenda that we have suggested. We appreciate you both coming to agreeing to participate in this program, this program this evening. Now, we did have a question for Council Executive Erich that came in, and I'm looking over at the participants, and I believe he had to step off, but I'm going to pose a question anyway, and maybe at a later date or as a follow-up, he can address this question. And this question came in from one of our viewers, Kelly Leonard, seeking clarification whether or not the 20% that was committed that County Executive Elridge mentioned was attached to small, local Black businesses. A very, very important point. And that brings to close the economic development portion of our program. Again, thank you, Councilmember Reamer, Councilmember Hucker, and I'm going to turn the program back over to Lori Ann.
All right, thank you, Dr. Valentine, for moderating the economic development portion of our discussion this evening. And thank you to our council members and county executive for responding to our questions and committing to helping us achieve economic equity and empowerment as we move forward and transition out of the recovery. So thank you again to our Board of Education members who have joined us. And it looks like our county executive has rejoined as well. Before we delve into our priority areas for education, I'd like to share a few key points just to start with framing our requests. The achievement and opportunity gap remains a persistent concern for a significant population of Black and Brown students in MCPS, especially those impacted by poverty, as some groups lag academically when compared to their white and Asian peers. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Black students were disproportionately more likely to experience unfinished learning The notion that material presented to students has yet to be mastered. Strategies shown to be effective in countering unfinished learning include targeted intensive tutoring, expanded learning time, and strong teacher-student relationships. As MCPS unveiled the Virtual Learning Academy, anecdotal evidence suggests that most students opting in were Black and Brown. Parents and advocates have raised questions about the focus, rigor, and support that will be offered to students and their families. Black students who have even one Black teacher during elementary school are more likely to graduate high school and consider college. Black students with Black teachers experience less exclusionary discipline, a crucial break in the school to prison pipeline. We will follow the same format as the previous economic equity segment. I will present each ask one at a time. After each question, I will ask each of you to respond with a yes or no regarding your ability to commit to working with the collective and others within the Black community to address the issue. And so before we begin, I'm going to turn this over to Will Roberts, president of the Association of Black Democrats and co-founder of the State of Black Montgomery. Thank you. Will?
Thanks so much, Lori. And thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you also for setting out some of the data points that we collected in talking with the community in past sessions. It'll help me ask these questions a little bit faster. So much appreciated. Want to also thank again our Board of Education members for joining us, President Brenda Wolf, Vice President Carlos Silvestri, Dr. Judy Daca, and Board Member Shevra Evans. Also see Council Member at Large Evan Glass has joined us as well. And so as we dive into the education portion, want to bring primarily our Board of Education members in, but also, you know, as our council members are able to stay with us or be with us, would love to hear from you all as well. So with that, we'll dive right in. Again, as Lori said, sort of follow the same format of yes or no on the questions, and then look forward to saving some of that time at the end for some good discussion. So I'll start first, you know, with the virtual academy, and you heard the data point that Lorianne shared. You know, our key question is hoping that you'll commit to support the funding, organization, staffing, and oversight of the virtual academy so that it can be as rigorous as the in-person experience, and to ensure that teacher-student contact is maximized to make sure that we're providing an enriched learning environment. So that's our first question that would love a yes or no from folks real quick. And we'll start with President Wolf, go to Vice President, Dr. Daca, and Member Evans, and then go to our council members. Oh, you're on mute, Madam President.
That's the phrase of the year. So my answer is yes, we can do that.
Fantastic.
My answer is yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Judy.
Dr.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And Councilmember Glass, Council President Hucker. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that with a yes or no or not, but feel free to.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Totally agree.
Thank you. Council Vice President Albanaz, I see you joined us. You might not have caught that first question there, but we'll catch you in for sure. So thank you very much for responding in the affirmative to that, and would love, I'm sure everyone would love to have some more discussion about that. The next question, you know, we mentioned the unfinished instruction that Black students are experiencing during the pandemic, and the strategies, again, that have been found most effective to combat that: targeted intensive tutoring, expanded learning time, and strong teacher-student relationships. And so, you know, we know, of course, from the many studies done internally and externally, that Black students in MCPS have in various ways felt underserved and been underserved, in MCPS across the key matrices, reading scores, math scores, use of punitive discipline, and others. And again, that's backed up both by reports done by the Office of Legislative Oversight and, even statements from former Superintendent Smith. And so our asks here as well are in, our asks here are in two parts. One, and this is for the board members, will the Board of Education commit to using all of those three strategies that we've talked about to improve achievement for Black students? And in so doing, would the board commit to actively sharing data on the results of these efforts with the collective and with other organizations advocating for Black children in MCPS?
Yes, we can do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. Fantastic. All right. And so, on the matter of representation, as was cited, Black students who have the experience with a Black teacher during their school years, especially in elementary school, are more likely to succeed, high school, consider college, etc. And so, not be involved with the school to prison pipeline. And so our asks here are twofold, at least as well. First, wondering if you can commit to increasing the number of Black and Brown teachers in MCPS and significantly increasing the investment in grow your own programs, such as I know SEIU has a career pathways program, for instance. So grow your own programs like that to support and train current service employees who may want to come into the teaching profession. That's the first question.
Yes.
Yes to both parts of the question. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Fantastic. And in addition to those grow your own programs, can you all commit to requiring that MCPS more actively leverage their and the county's relationships, but our school system's relationships with HBCUs across the nation, both as sources for teaching candidates from students, within respective education departments or within other academic disciplines such as STEM?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. We are moving through really efficiently, which means we'll have lots of time for discussion. So our final question is really, related to that out of school time. As we said, that's, crucial to how young people grow and develop. And, the county has lots of various programs and providers, some of whom work well together, some of whom don't, share information well together, some of whom don't. And so we really want to get at, and in the discussion that we had with community members, it was very interesting. We had, folks who were parents, who were providers, who worked in these organizations, and we really drilled down on this idea of coordination and the integration of these programs to support youth and families, especially those who might be vulnerable. And so, this is really a question getting at the heart of how we are able to share student data between nonprofits and, those nonprofit serving students and the school system to better support how our kids grow and develop. And so the ask here is, can you commit to working across the board really with HHS, the Collaboration Council, the Children's Opportunity Fund, other such organizations to develop safe data sharing mechanisms? And I know we can have a discussion about what safe data sharing mechanisms mean, because we want to make sure our student data is safe, but safe data sharing mechanisms based on a marker such as a student ID number that can help MCPS know more about students out of school time, activity, and allow those out of school time providers sort of blind data on the participants within their programs.
Since you added the word safe, we can have a discussion, yes?
Yes.
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 Fantastic, fantastic. Well, and we have, so thank you very much. Those were the asks derived from those rich discussions that we had. And maybe we should pick up on that data question first, because we'd love to get some more of your insights.
So far, so good.
We would love to get some more of your insights about how we can do that safely. And so we have about 10 minutes here, so we're going to try to keep our responses brief, but definitely want to give people some time parity. So Council President Wolf, I don't know if you prefer me to start with you or some of your colleagues, but
Well, I'm sure that you know that we have a number of laws that we have to abide by, FERPA being a very important one. So anytime we're giving out student information, we have to ensure that that information is safe. So it would be somewhat difficult if you start using student ID numbers because that's identifiable. But I think we could certainly have a discussion about if it's possible and how we can do it. I think it's much easier for us to receive data than for us to give out data. But we do post achievement data consistently. So I think if we're receiving data, we could certainly analyze it and post it in such a way that it is not identifiable and would be useful to the public. But we'd also like to know how this is going to impact achievement in order to, develop any sort of agreements with our partner agencies. I don't know if any of my other colleagues would like to speak on that subject.
I just wanted to add that we do have precedents for this. The Kennedy cluster, the cluster models have been sharing data with an established MOU between Health and Human Services and MCPS. And so they have found a way to do it. I think it's a good model for us to look at in terms of expanding that collaboration so that we can be certain that we understand who is participating in out of school time, which I think is the crux of the matter.
Certainly. Thanks so much for that. I don't know if Dr. Daka or Ms. Evans, if you all have anything else to add on that point.
My colleagues hit it right on the head. They answered it. Yep.
Fantastic. Can I ask, since we have some of our council members here, and Councilmember Jawando, welcome as well. We're having a conversation about data sharing in MCPS between out of school time organizations and in MCPS to help understand better how to support our children. And so we've heard from our school board members about some ways that we might be able to look into how we safely do that. And of course, some of the levels that we need to address there. But I wonder if folks on the council have a perspective about how we can see that data sharing process happen, or the imperative to do that.
Thanks, Will. I mean, just personally, this has come up in many different policy areas. And I always personally feel like it's very hard to make good informed policy decisions without good data. And there are many ways to anonymize data to address the privacy concerns that have come up and meet the legal standards. But absolutely, I share the goals, and we can work through the privacy concerns and get to the goal here.
Thanks so much.
Well, I'll just add really quick. So when I was working for the Recreation Department, we launched Excel Beyond the Bell. And then council member Mark Elrich pushed actively and correctly to ensure better outcome data. And so the Recreation Department partnered with MCPS, as well as the providers of the Excel Beyond the Bell program at each of the middle schools. And we also work with the parents, and we're able to get parent permission slips, and we're able to troubleshoot challenges when we couldn't have ready access to data. And that was really important because it helped us focus our programming and services in areas where they were the most needed. It helped leverage what few precious resources we had more effectively, because the Excel Beyond the Bell was launched during the recession. And that information is tremendously informative, so we can build off of programs from year over year. And Excel Beyond the Bell has been in existence long enough that you actually can see a longitudinal study. And what the data unquestionably showed is that students that participated more actively in the program, especially over 3, 4, 5, 6 years, had better academic data, had better social and emotional learning data. And so it was valuable information that has actually allowed us to expand Excel Beyond the Bell with great comfort, knowing that it's a program that's pretty effective.
Can I jump in here, Will?
Please.
I'm back on in the proper computer now. Like Will said, like Gabe said, we tried to broach this area back when I was on the council, and it was very frustrating. And we had the plethora of programs. We had not a clue what programs were working, what programs weren't working. When you've got scarce resources, you can't afford to be funding things that aren't doing what they need to do while you're not able to increase funding for successful programs. So that's always been really important. I was glad that we were able to work things out with the school system. Then data sharing is always going to be an ongoing issue, because from their perspective, they're concerned about student identification. And if the data gets too granular in a classroom, you can begin to identify, for example, who the student might be. But at the school level, I believe that they can certainly give us the macro data that we can use to do some of these evaluations. So I will continue to push with that. I will say that, we've been working with Monifa McKnight, the acting superintendent, on a number of issues right now. I know near and dear to your hearts, the bringing of mental health services into the schools. And they've been really not just cooperative, but I feel like we're in a partnership. So I hope that bodes well for some of these efforts over the next year.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that.
Can I just jump in here a minute? Will, and tell you that Gabe said something that was important too. The parents can consent to the release of any information on their child. What we were talking about is the privacy laws that the federal and the state has, but parents can agree to release the information, and that will make it a lot easier. And having an agreement between, say, an HHS and us could have a parent component, which would make it a lot easier.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. I mean, it sounds like there's a good basis for us for this conversation. Well, one, it sounds like this conversation is happening in various forms, but a good basis to see how we can move forward. And Collective would love to be a part of that from a community perspective. I wonder in the last couple of minutes that we have here, if we could turn back for a second to the virtual academy, just because, in the conversations that we had with community members, as we mentioned, look, there's a lot of concern because there was strong interest, primarily from Black and Brown students, just about the rigor and sort of parity of the two systems. And so I wonder if I could give folks first, our folks from the Board of Education a chance to sort of expound upon that first question, and then sort of bring in our council members as well. But just we talk a little bit about how we're trying to make sure that the virtual academy is what it needs to be, for all students certainly, but for the Black and Brown students that seem most interested in it.
The virtual academy has been an interesting phenomena because people have decided that we are trying to set up a dumping ground for Black and Brown children, and that is just not true. The children who will be going or who are accepted to the virtual academy will be held to the same standards as the children who are going to school. So they will have state assessments, they will have the county assessments, the MCPS assessments. They will have tutoring available. They will have honors level courses available. And they will be doing everything that our regular students are doing. So we're not sure why this has come up to be considered a dumping ground, because it definitely is not that in our mind. It's a way for students who need something that is non-traditional next year to have an opportunity to go to school and receive the same education as all of our students.
I just wanted to add that there might be some confusion. We originally did a survey months ago asking families who was interested in the virtual academy. And yes, a lot of our families of color said they were interested. However, to date, we have, and the registration closes next week, we have 284 African American students actually signed up for the virtual academy. So that's, I mean, the future, the improvement is going to happen in the school building. And yes, we are committed to holding the highest standards for our virtual academy, but the majority of our African American students will be in person in front of a teacher 5 days a week, like in a regular school year. So most of the students that have signed up for the virtual academy, I would say 50%, have signed up because of health reasons for themselves or their families. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
Thank you very much, and I apologize if you hurt my phone. It's my mother trying to call her grandchild.
That's very important.
Very important. So, but I apologize for that. Any other comments there?
Yeah,
we have a couple more minutes, so yeah.
Sure. I actually, one of the things that I think's come out of the virtualness of everything is, well, I don't think everything worked swimmingly well, but I do think in other cases there were things that worked pretty well. One thing that's pretty clear is there are classes that could be taught virtually, and we've had these endless competitions for precious slots and magnet programs, and if you didn't get into the magnet program, then you got excluded. And we excluded far more kids for better opportunities than we had slots. And I do think that the virtual ability to teach in some classes, I would not do this in a chemistry class or anything where you had to touch, handle, deal with things, but the ability to learn virtually should actually open up the door for a lot more students to get these opportunities that you don't get it because you weren't one of the lucky 100, chosen for this program or that program. We should be able to do this, and we should, when I took language, for example, at the University of Maryland, I did classwork in a cubicle with a computer in front of me and headphones and something else. There's no reason why we couldn't time schedules in schools and allow students to go to a Chinese class or go to a particular advanced language class or an advanced history or something class and take advantage of the ability to do things virtually and put these services around the county. If I had to set up classrooms for everybody, I would run out of classrooms. But if I could do more of this stuff virtually around the county, I think we can look at some of this as a way of opening up opportunity to people that we weren't able to open up to before.
Well, thanks so much. And, as our conversations have developed, both within the collective and in the community, definitely in line with supporting that flexibility. I'm going to wrap in just a second, turn it over back to Lori, but I wondered, how many total applicants do we have for the virtual academy? Do we know that? I know you mentioned that the 200
applicants or acceptances that are going there.
I suppose acceptances, so we can know how many people how many students are gonna be in.
I think it's 284.
Okay, and out of
It's African American students.
284 African American students. But overall, do we know how many students are going to be in versus how many applied? I suppose, and that's something we could certainly follow up with you all and get, actually, if we don't have it at the moment.
Yeah, the registration closes next week, so we're still admitting and interviewing candidates. It has to be a good fit for them.
Gotcha.
I think we mentioned that the virtual academy is for extenuating circumstances in many cases, and it would be like our home and hospital teaching, only they changed the name of that. So it would be for students that have some health issues, and I think Carla mentioned that. So we know those students are going to be in there. How many other students are going to be in there? That we do need to find out.
Right, and although, as you mentioned, the extenuating circumstances, but we know certainly, for as parents and students are coming out on the other side, or at least in the next phase, since we are still in a pandemic of COVID, there are surely some folks who, although they don't have extenuating circumstances at home, who would prefer the flexibility, and so it's good for us to have that conversation going, and so committed to being a part of that with you all And I'm going to turn it back over to Lorianne. We can keep this conversation going, but I'm a little bit over time. So thank you so much for that. And we will definitely be following up.
Right. Thank you, Will, for the very informative panel discussion with our attendees. We do have questions that are coming in via YouTube, the chat line. And so if our county executive is still here, I had a question that was posed, County Executive Elrich, about
Lorianne, I have the question in front of me if you want me.
Thank you. Yes, please. Thank you, Dr. Valentine.
So the question Mark came in from Kelly Leonard, someone that the community are well know very clearly, was seeking some clarification. Is the 20% commitment that you mentioned during the economic development portion of our conversation attached to small, local Black businesses? Because we want to be clear in terms of the messaging that's being put across in our program this evening.
So when I talked to Ash today, he said that about 20%, actually a little more, 20% of the fungible money that the county had to spend, not all money is fungible, went to Black businesses. But we were also increasing the share that goes to local small businesses, and they don't actually break down data under however small businesses are categorized. That data has not been put out as a granular label, but we've been increasing the share to small businesses, and we're hoping, we've talked with Ash about, can we actually supplement the data on the small business part? But we've put out this money to the small business, which is kind of remarkable in the last year because of how much of the money was spent on PPE, personal protective equipment, and all this, which came from much larger businesses and suppliers, which tended to be, national in scope. So, we're committed to maintaining this. I didn't get a chance to, you asked questions about what we were going to do, and I got jumbled up in the dead zone of my phone. But I just wanted to say, we've set up small business centers in all of the regional service centers. So when they reopen fully, we're bringing back the small business centers. And that was part of our effort to get small business support out to the community. So the point about knowing what we have, knowing what we do, being able to get questions answered, we recognized that when I first came in, and that was one of the first things we got into the budget and the council passed, was support for small business centers. And that's something that will be back with a vengeance once we're fully open, have opened everything up again. So we really are committed to doing the kind of things you talked about, and we've made major reforms. I think you were in some of our listening sessions.
I was, sir. And so we appreciate your efforts. We appreciate you sticking around to be able to follow up on that question. I believe Lorianne will probably have a few more minutes to give you. So Lori, back to you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Valentine. And so before we transition to our final panel, we wanted to give the county executive just a minute or two to briefly address the health, economic, and education, the state of for our Black residents, and any commitments that have been discussed this evening before we go to our final topic of discussion.
So in a minute or two, okay.
I'll say for each topic.
Okay, so on the education issue, most of this lies in the court of the school system, though we have fully funded the school system budget, and we even, the council limited the amount of funding we were able to provide one year. We were willing to go above maintenance of effort. I found it difficult to be arguing in Annapolis that I needed more money than we could spend and then not be able to spend the money we thought we needed to support the schools. But we've been fully committed to working this out. I spent a lot of time in Annapolis lobbying for money because it's critically important that we have the resources that we need. On the health issue, Dr. Gales has basically been a saint, and we have supported him. I have supported him 100% all the way through this. And he will tell you that I'm one of the few, maybe only county executive who's put his full weight behind the public health officer and did what we needed to do. So what you find in Montgomery County is that we actually had a social justice, racial justice plan for distribution of vaccines. We were unique. When we had people sign up on our registration site, and when we put out the call for people to get vaccinated, we targeted the first people to the zip codes and census tracts where we knew we had the highest percentage of minority populations and the folks who are least likely to have access to the technology. We determined from the beginning that we were not going to make getting vaccinated a first come, first serve deal because we know who would win the first come, first served race. So we worked very hard and we continue to work hard. We partnered with the African American Health Initiative. We have worked with them. We'll continue to work with them. One of the big things we took away from all of this is we're keeping our community hubs. We'll keep 5 hubs out in the community because we learned that by working with community organizations, we had a far deeper reach into the community than we would ever have if we just relied on the county government. And that was a hard lesson to swallow for some people because we're used to doing things. The county sets the rules, the county controls everything. We let go of a bunch of control and gave a degree of autonomy to the nonprofits we'd never given before, and they delivered for us. So we're looking at that as a model. We're going to keep working deeper in the community. We're going to keep the local supports up. And on the small business front, out of all those listening sessions we did, some of the important work we've done is we have simplified our contracting processes. The contracts are no longer, the massive documents they used to be. They've become readable without a lawyer and an accountant. We're looking at permitting from a different perspective. And it used to be that if you failed in Montgomery County, if somebody didn't pass you, you were on your own and you'd say, well, come back again when you think you got it right. Now we're doing pre-meetings. We're doing meetings with somebody. If they fail to pass, we're actually working with them so they know what to submit the second time so they can get it right. We've kind of taken the guesswork out of this. We're doing all these things within an effort to try to undo our reputation as being the worst place in the universe to do business. And it's really galling when you have, your friends telling you that I tell my friends to open up a business in another county. So we've taken the things people said and took it seriously. And so you see changes in procurement, changes in permitting, and all the things that businesses interface with now. Things are going faster. I'm getting letters of thank you from people instead of why the heck does it take so long to do something here? It's not we haven't become perfect yet. There are still there's always the ability of an individual to mess up something, and we do get things messed up sometimes. So by and large, we have begun to change the culture, and that was the biggest thing. We want people to tell people what their experiences were like in the county. I don't want to be afraid of somebody talking to a friend or a neighbor about Montgomery County. I want them to be able to have good stories to tell. And I think, we've done a lot of that. And what you see is, in terms of, the broader economic development, we got Montgomery College to agree to open a campus on the east side of Montgomery County. Not another Bethesda or what is it? Tacoma Park, Rockville, and Germantown. We're going to get one on the east side of the county. And that I think is important. We're looking at an incubator facility at the old CHI building on the east side of the county so that people can come in, get training, get opportunities to develop businesses, things they didn't have before. And what we can do to enhance our reach into the community.
All right. Thank you, County Executive Elrich. We're going to give you some more time after we delve into this final panel, and want to bring in all of our council members as well. So the COVID-19 pandemic amplified the health disparities we already knew existed within the African American community, within the Black community. We started off this 4-part series with The Power to Breathe, which focused on mental health. And so, we want to ensure that we, as as a result, we had the worst health outcomes out of any other minority group, with the highest rates of disease and deaths. In addition, data from the Brookings Institute shows that Black people are dying from COVID-19 at approximately the same rates as their white counterparts who are more than 10 years older. Not enough Black residents are involved in the healthcare delivery system in Montgomery County. People often want providers that look like them, that they feel they can trust. This is especially true for our immigrant populations who may not have a legal status and are reluctant to seek medical care. This not only affects primary health care, but maternal health care also. Black women have the highest rates of maternal death, 3 times higher than a white woman. We need a more significant number of Black healthcare providers in accessible locations in our community. Finally, the issue of data. This has come up in each of our discussions. We know about the Office of Legislative Oversight, and we want to better understand how data is compiled, how data analyses are conducted, and to improve outcomes, we need the most up-to-date information and data focused on the demographics of our diverse communities in our county to better understand what disparities exist and what improvements must be made. When disparities continue to go unresolved, it proves they have not been addressed in an appropriate manner designed to eliminate them. And so without further ado, we're going to go into the same setup as the last time. And there will be 4 question asks of our council members and our county executive. When you look at health disparities in the Black community, the data being used is older than what resulted in some of the programs currently underway. There is now 2020 data available with the added lens of COVID-19. This 2020 data would not account for the impact of COVID on disparities. Will you commit to pushing to make the 2020 data available from the county to compare improvements? What has gotten worse and what changes, if any, need to be made? And we will start with our council president, Tom Hucker.
Sorry, Lorianne, I'm back on. Sorry, I'm a little distracted because I'm supposed to speak at another group at 7:45, but I moved it back. Yes, I'll commit. And what was the second question?
So will you commit to compare improvements based on what has gotten worse and what changes, if any, need to be made?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I spoke earlier about the importance of good data to good decision making, and absolutely, this whole experience the last year and a half has only shown a spotlight on the disparities that we already know exist. So,
thank you, Tom. Let's see, and Council Vice President Albornoz. Do you need the question?
Alarm going off in the background. I apologize, but the answer is yes.
All right, thank you. And we will provide time after all of the questions are completed for you to expound on any of your responses. The next council member I see is Council Member Evan Glass.
Let me answer it this way. As a member,
yes, no, council member, and then we're going to allow all of the council members to expound after all the questions are read.
Then yes.
Thank you, sir. And Council Member Jawanda?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And our County Executive Elrich?
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. Next question. According to the African American Health Program SMILE program, infant mortality is 2 to 3 times higher in Montgomery County for Black mothers as compared to their white counterparts. And a 2018 study indicated that Black mothers were 61% more likely to experience severe maternal morbidity than their white counterparts. Looking deeper into AAHP SMILE program, are you committed to funding a retooling strategy to better tailor the interventions that will decrease the disproportionate impact of infant mortality on Black women across the spectrum? And we'll start with our county executive with this
Yes.
one. Thank you, sir. Council President Hooker?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Council Vice President Albornoz?
Yes.
Thank you. Council Member Glass?
Yes.
Thank you. And Council Member Jawando?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Third question. While Black residents make up 19% of the population, we are only 14% of the vaccinated population. We believe there needs to be more creative ways to increase vaccinations, like 24-hour vaccine sites or mobile clinics to close the gap. Would you support Health and Human Services contracting with or incentivizing home health agencies to assist hard-to-reach communities with finding a suitable vaccine locations to better address the unmet needs of unvaccinated populations? We will start with County Executive Elrich.
What was the number of unvaccinated people? It seemed like it was different to all the numbers we've been working with. So what is?
So we have 19% of our population is made up of Black residents. We only, the data show that only 14%, yes, of the population.
Yeah, okay, I get it. Okay. Yeah, we've been working to close.
Yes or no questions?
Yes.
Sir.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. All right. And Council President Hooker?
Yes. And I apologize, Lori, and I have to jump for this other thing, but I put my cell phone in the chat. Stay in touch.
Thank you, sir. Sounds good. Council Vice President Albornoz?
Yes, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Council Member Glass?
Yes.
Thank you. And Council Member Jawando?
Yes.
Thank you. Last question. Access to accurate, reliable, and trusted healthcare information is vital to the sustainability of Black lives. We noticed during the pandemic that there was a lack of access to culturally competent physicians, and thus the Black Physicians Network was created. Is the county committed to exploring partnerships with Black physicians to provide data or information on the effectiveness of the Black Physicians Network to date, and explore how to engage them beyond financial incentives? We'll start with our County Executive Elrich, please. Thank you. Council Vice President Albornoz?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, cutie. Council Member Glass?
Yes.
All right. And Council Member Jawando?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Okay. And so now okay. All right. So now we are going to invite our county executive and council members to respond and expound on any of the health questions and commitments that were just obtained. And so who wants to go first? We'll start with Council Vice President Albornoz, and then do a round robin on who I see next.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in at some point here.
Yes, and then you'll go next, Councilmember Jawando. Thank you.
Hi, well, thank you so much, Lorianne, and it's good seeing you, and it's good seeing everybody. I apologize, I was late onto this call, so I'm still getting adjusted to this format. These are such important questions, and there is no more important issue than the one we're discussing right now. It's foundational to everything else. And obviously, this last year and a half has been nothing short of tragic and completely overwhelming at times. And all the disparities that existed prior to the pandemic, a light has been shown on them in a way that is truly, as I said, tragic. So clearly addressing these systemic issues has to be our highest priority coming out of this. And there are multiple layers to this. And as the county executive mentioned, I do give in a lot of credit to Dr. Kroll and Dr. Gales and Dr. Bridgers and the entire public health team, as well as our primary care coalition, our community-based organizations, our community clinics, our hospitals. The way that they forged a safety net was nothing short of heroic. But even despite those efforts, there were still significant gaps, as you all have pointed out. And I think we're going to have to tackle this from just about every conceivable front. But we also have to think differently about this framework. Public health is not just one lane. It's connected to housing, it's connected to transportation, it's connected to the climate. All of those things go hand in hand. It's connected to workforce development. And so it's at the core of all of it. And I think that we have to start thinking systemically in each of those areas: economic development, workforce development, housing, transportation, as a public health issue. And we also have to get granular in our policies to take advantage of some of the things that actually worked pretty well in this last year and a half. The expansion of telemedicine and telehealth is a significant opportunity, and we received an incredible update from the Mary Center with some groundbreaking work they're doing in that area. To make that fully work, we have to close the digital divide. But if we can, and if we do, then that's going to make a big difference. And I have a lot of things to say, but I know I don't have a lot of time. I'll just end with this for right now. The two innovations that I was the most excited about that came out of this last year and a half, number one is the Black Doctors Network. And that is true of our other immigrant communities as well, and our other ethnic and cultural communities. We need to do a better job of establishing a network of providers that can provide support for each other, leverage resources, and create a pipeline for future medical practitioners that better reflect the diversity of our communities, because that is when we are going to start getting better outcomes. And it starts in the womb with the prenatal care that you mentioned so beautifully, Lorianne. So I really look forward to this ongoing discussion. This is something I'm super fired up about because I think there's an opportunity here for us to right some wrongs and to really move us forward.
Thank you, Council Vice President Albornoz. We'll go to Councilmember Jawando and then Councilmember Glass afterwards. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Good to be with everybody this evening as well. Big topic, really, really important. It was a year ago last week that we actually declared racism a public health emergency here in Montgomery County. One of the few counties to do so, and others have followed suit. We still need to do it in the state. I led that resolution along with my colleagues who all supported it. In there, it calls on us to do many things, and health disparities and social determinants of health, having specific plans to address them is among them. And I actually just had a conversation with Dr. Gales today to get an update on things in this arena. There will be a new report, epidemiological report on the disparities coming out, later this summer, maybe early fall. They're working on that. And frankly, there's a ton to do. I think Councilmember Albornoz mentioned this. This is connected to everything we do. We Black residents have lost 3 years of life expectancy. You cited in your lead-in the 10 years younger. If you're African American or Latino resident, you're catching when you get COVID, you're dying 10 years younger than your white counterparts. It's one of the reasons I and we have been pushing from the beginning to target our strategy for vaccine allocation and distribution. We had a Board of Health regulation that I had worked on that would have allowed us to prioritize younger Black and Latino residents for vaccinations when they were such a, it's hard to remember now. We had the opposite problem, but there was a long period of time where we didn't have enough. And it's an example of that we're going to need to use every tool at our disposal to address these health disparities and social determinants of health. And so the data is critically important. We're going to need to look at how we deliver services. I'm glad you all asked about SMILE and other programs. We're going to have to do it in at higher scale and go deeper into communities. When we have our briefing about vaccinations, for example, there's still dark red pockets in the eastern side and other parts of the county where I still haven't gotten adequate response to what exactly is going on there. And we're trying to dig in, and to your last point here, a commitment that we all made, using innovative strategies to get into those communities and figure out really at the granular level what's going on. Another thing I'll mention is we have to look at who has access to care. We have a great system in our network here of clinics with Montgomery Cares, but when you peel back that data, we know that Black residents are underrepresented greatly in who's accessing those services. And we have to get to the bottom of that and change that. I think that's one of the reasons Councilmember Rice and I are really excited, as are all the colleagues, about the Black Doctors Network, trying to get new people. I have personally put 2 or 3 Black doctors into our CARES network so that they can be part of the delivery services as far as recommendations for them to participate in those services. We've got work to do. So there's a lot to do. This is a really, really important issue. And I'm glad that you all are taking it up, and very committed to working with my colleagues and the administration to make some real progress in this year.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Jawanda, for your commitments to the issues outlined. And now we will follow up with Councilmember Glass.
Well, thank you very much, Lorianne. There's a lot to unpack in the comments that the questions that you asked. My colleagues have done a good job of taking pieces of them. And in pre-pandemic, I remember sitting in meetings, committee sessions on the Health and Human Services Committee, chaired so ably by Vice President Albornoz. And twice a year, we would have a presentation by Dr. Travis Gales, and he would share health updates with us at the precinct level of how we as a county are doing health-wise. And in those maps, we would see where the health disparities were. Well, it did not take COVID-19 to make us realize that they were the same health disparities that we've seen during COVID-19. It just ripped the Band-Aid off for everybody to see, not just those of us who were accustomed to seeing that data. And as we were going through the pandemic, we all, county government, I am so proud of county government for doing what we could in the manner, in timeline in which we could, to make sure that everybody received the healthcare and the vaccines that they needed. But the reality is those heat maps and where the communities that were most impacted by COVID are the same communities, as I said, where those healthcare gaps existed, the same communities where the food insecurity exists, the same communities where the achievement gap exists and transportation inequities exist. We know where the communities that need help are. And I am committed to making sure that as we rebuild and rethink the way government provides services, that we are attuned to those communities and we focus very closely on those communities for an equitable recovery. That is the only way that we can do this right. And it's interesting also to note that the decades and centuries of injustices that have been taking place as we rebuild, not only do we need to rethink the way we provide these services, but I also believe we just need to rethink some of our government structures. If there's a silver lining to the last year and a half, it was our ability to cut red tape and provide funding and provide resources to the community-based nonprofit organizations and social service organizations that did yeoman's work day in and day out to protect us as partners of government and as members of the community. And there are lessons to be learned there as to how we build back better. And I think, with the suggestions that you have made, the conversations that we're having tonight and the conversations that will continue to be had over the next year, we need to seize these opportunities to really do a course correction so that we create a more equitable community for everybody here in Montgomery County, but a more equitable government as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Glass. I think that's the perfect way to end. That's exactly what we strive to do, is create a more equitable and inclusive Montgomery County for all of us to thrive. And so I want to thank all of our elected officials, from our county executive to our county council members and our Board of Education members. Thank you for addressing all of our topics, and thank you for your commitment to addressing the health and wellness disparities that continue to impact Black lives in Montgomery County. So this has been an encouraging and insightful evening. We have clarity for the framing of the Black agenda for 2021. We will take these commitments, review the recording, and develop the scorecard and roadmap for what lies ahead in our transformational efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you again. This brings us to the close of our third event in our 4-part series. Before we go, on behalf of the Montgomery County Black Collective and the state of Black Montgomery, I'd like to give a tremendous thank you again to our county executive and to the county council members that were able to attend, and our Board of Education members who all took the time out of their busy schedules to join us this evening, to listen to our issues, and to commit to joining us in addressing them in an equitable way. Thank you all to all of our viewers who tuned in on via YouTube. We want to thank you for your questions and your comments. We will address them in our follow-up emails. So thank you again. And of course, this work was not done alone. So we would like to also thank our sponsors who contributed financially and in-kind services to make this event series happen. Starting with Beta Associates, the Nonprofit Village, Sandy Spring Bank, and Integrative Management Solutions, LLC. And a big thank you once again to our community media provider, Montgomery Community Media, and their amazing production team. Please mark your calendars for our 4th and final event in this 4-part series, Charting Our Course Forward, on July 14th, when we will reconvene to review what we learned this evening and finalize an actionable Black agenda for 2021 that will be shared countywide and used as a roadmap to advocate and hold those in leadership accountable to their commitments. Please visit the collective's website at mocoblackcollective.org and click on the events page to learn more about this last session, and please register. Given the importance, we hope you will participate on July 14th, which will be another interactive session like our second event, which will incorporate breakouts and the such. If you'd like more information about the collective, please send us an email at info@mocoblackcollective.org and help us spread the word by following us on Twitter as well. And to all of you who participated again, thank you for joining us. We hope you were informed, encouraged, and inspired to stay connected with us. Now is the time. We are here and we must chart our own course forward. We look forward to seeing you all on July 14th. Enjoy the rest of your evening. This isn't goodbye, but we hope to see you soon. Have a great evening. Thank you.